Hey everyone, and welcome back to Hearts Wine from Harsh Distractions. I'm your host, Alicia Minor Gaines, and I'm so glad you're joining me today because I got a topic that hits home for a lot of couples, new and old. So, we're diving into the fine line between love and control. And the question we're tackling is, are you helping each other grow? Or are you holding each other back? Yes, I know it's a delicate balance, right? Because love should empower us to become the best versions of ourselves, while control can stifle us and cause all sorts of problems. I'm going to pause and let that sink in for a second. So let's kick things off with a question to get you thinking. When was the last time you felt truly free to be yourself in your relationship? Not just in the okay, I'm not arguing with my partner way, but fully free to grow, change, and just be you. Think about that as we explore today's topic and you sip on your glass of wine or favorite beverage while trying not to lose control over your wine. You know, those tears when you recognize love has turned into control. I'm your host, Alicia Minor Gaines, an entrepreneur, licensed marriage and family therapist, wife, mother, author, poet, mixologist, and so much more with over 20 years plus of experience in the relationship field and mental health field. It is National Poetry Month, and I know I said that to you our last episode, but I got something special for y'all today. So, I was asked by a few listeners to share some of my poetry. Now, I do have a book out called Distractions of the Heart under my author name, Alicia Marie, and it is on Amazon. So please go and check it out, purchase it. And if you do purchase it and read it, feel free to leave a review on Amazon. Please and thank you. But today, I'm going to share a poem that I wrote that is not in my book, and I hope that you enjoy it. This poem is called Unlisted. As I observe the creation of your list, I can't help but feel something is being missed. Numbering down the page and listing each task to be achieved, all while ignoring the silence of what's being grieved. Assistance given with each issue to be conquered, advice provided as if it's supply and demand, while not realizing what's being shown and lost at hand. Reviewing the importance from number 1 to number 20, everything listed from issues, material things, kids, money, and even other honeys. Internal thoughts roaming to the realization of miscalculation of misplacement on this list, but no mistake was made as this has always been the case. Common sense shows one has always been second place. There's no confusion or misinterpretation of this fate being twisted. One just continuously remains absent-minded and unlisted. I hope y'all enjoyed that poem because it's National Poetry Month, and yes, I wanted to share it with you because I thought it was a good one. So, sit back, relax, because we're going to jump into our episode for today. All right, so let's start by defining the difference between love and control, because it can be tricky, right? We've all heard people say things like, I'm just trying to protect you, or I know what's best for you. We always hear that one, right? And while that might seem like love, it can actually cross the line into control, sometimes without us even realizing it. Love at its core is about encouragement, support, and giving each other the freedom to be who we are. Control, on the other hand, tends to creep in when we start restricting or dictating our partner's choices, maybe out of fear, jealousy, or even just a lack of trust. But here's the thing. Controlling behaviors aren't always obvious. They can hide behind something as innocent as concern or even a desire to help. I want to share this quote by Maya Angelou because I feel like this is going to help understand some things that I'm going to talk to y'all about today on this topic. Love liberates, it doesn't bind. Whew. In only 5 words, she just wrapped it all in one good bow for y'all. So pay attention. Think about this. You've probably heard someone say, I was just looking out for you, when they're overbearing, right? And the truth is, this line is often used by people who genuinely care, but care has boundaries. When we overstep those boundaries, it's no longer love, it's control. It's about imposing your will on someone else. I need some people to understand that line. So let's dig into this a bit more with an example. Because y'all know I like to give y'all examples so that way y'all can understand what I'm saying, right? Imagine a couple where one partner constantly questions the other's choices. Maybe they tell them they're worried about their job or their friends, or they're constantly trying to fix things that aren't broken. On the surface, it sounds like love, but deep down, it can feel suffocating. The thing is, control doesn't feel loving to the person on the other end who's receiving it. It can feel like you're being treated like a child instead of an equal partner. And who doesn't want to feel like they're in an equal partnership versus being controlled by a partner who now they have to look at as if it's their parent? No one wants that. I know I don't. Now, let's talk about how control shows up in relationships. I want you to think about these common behaviors and see if any of them sound familiar. If they do, you might be unknowingly engaging in controlling behaviors, or you could be on the receiving end of them. First off, let's talk about excessive criticism. This is one of the sneakiest forms of control. You might say things like, or hear things like, you really should have done it this way, or why don't you just listen to me? And while feedback is totally valid when it's given out correctly, when it happens all the time, it can make someone feel like nothing they do is ever good enough. Take a couple I worked with. Let's call them Alex and Jordan. Alex often criticized Jordan's spending habits, even when Jordan made decisions that worked for their own lifestyle. At first, Alex thought they were just being responsible, but over time, Jordan felt like they were being babied or constantly judged. It took a big conversation for Alex to realize that while their intentions were good, their behavior was coming off as controlling. Control also shows up when one partner makes decisions for the other, whether that's about work, friends, or even things as simple as what to wear or eat. While this might feel like concern, it's actually a form of dependency that prevents personal growth. And I don't know about y'all, but I like to make my own decisions. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with taking into consideration of what your partner is saying to you. But if it falls on a line of control, that's a huge no-no. Did you know that studies from the National Domestic Violence Hotline reveal that controlling behaviors like excessive monitoring or micromanaging decisions are one of the first signs of an unhealthy relationship? And I'm not talking about just in abusive relationships, by the way. These patterns definitely show up in healthy relationships too, but they're just less obvious. So you might want to be paying attention to some of the signs. And we will get to that in this episode, I promise. But here's the thing. Recognizing controlling behaviors is the first step. It's not about shaming anyone. It's about understanding that it's possible to love someone without trying to mold them into someone they're not. Let's move on to something that's critical for every relationship: personal growth. Here's the thing. When you're in a healthy relationship, your partner should be your biggest cheerleader, not your critic. You should be encouraging each other to grow, evolve, and thrive, both as individuals and as a couple. I think that's what help makes power couples. Just saying. Personal growth in a relationship means that each person is given the freedom to pursue their own goals, dreams, and passions. It's about supporting each other's journey, even when it looks different from what you expected. The relationship can still be strong, but each person needs room to stretch beyond the boundaries of the partnership and explore what makes them feel fulfilled. Oof, I don't think y'all was listening. I might have to give y'all another example. Think about another couple I work with. We're going to call them Taylor and Chris. Taylor had been in a job they didn't like for years, and they were afraid to make the leap to a new career. Chris was terrified of the change because it meant a potential shift in their lifestyle. But over time, Chris realized that if they truly loved Taylor, they needed to let them take the leap and support their dreams, even if it meant sacrifices, even if it meant falling on their faces. And you know what? After that conversation, Taylor felt more confident than ever to make the career change that was needed, not just for Taylor, but for their relationship. Let that sink in. And while you're letting that sink in, I'm going to hit you with another quote, because I like quotes, because I feel like they bring things home sometimes. This quote is by Rafael Ortiz. True love is not about finding someone to live with. It's about finding someone you can't imagine living without. Ooh, I think some of y'all might have paused when I just said that, because some of y'all in relationships to just live with someone, to depend on someone, versus recognizing, am I in this relationship not because I need to be, but because I want to be? And that's so different, because when you want to be there, then that means you're able to say that this is my person. This is the person that I cannot live without. And you're going to show up in a way that's loving and hopefully not controlling. Okay, I'm going to move on. But it's moments like these that truly strengthen a relationship, as we saw in that example. When you allow your partner to pursue their dreams and passions, you're not just supporting them. You're also allowing your love to grow. You're saying, I believe in you, and I want you to be the best version of yourself so you can be the best version for us. Okay, some of y'all heard that. Now, let's talk about boundaries. Boundaries in a relationship are so important because they're often overlooked. When one person oversteps another's boundaries, it doesn't just create tension. It damages trust, which is the bedrock of love. Yep, I said bedrock of love. I like that. Boundaries can be physical, emotional, or even professional. Maybe you find that you're checking up on your partner a little too often. Maybe you're pushing them into situations they're not ready for. When this happens, it's a sign that control is seeping in, even if it's not intentional. I'm going to give y'all another story. Think of a couple I worked with. We're going to call them Morgan and Blake. Blake needed space to decompress after work, but Morgan had a tendency to constantly ask questions about their day or plan activities without considering Blake's need for quiet time. It wasn't because Morgan didn't love Blake. It was because Morgan was trying to fix what they thought was wrong. Over time, this eroded their emotional connection because Blake felt like their needs for alone time weren't respected. So when you overstep boundaries, you're not being loving. You're unintentionally creating a situation where your partner feels trapped or suffocated. The key is respecting each other's boundaries, because when you do, you build trust, intimacy, and love. Okay, now that we've talked about control, boundaries, and personal growth, let's dive into something that's at the core of every healthy relationship: trust and communication. These two elements go hand in hand, I promise you. Without one, the other falls apart. If you want your relationship to thrive, you need to build trust and communicate effectively. Trust isn't just about being honest with each other. It's also about feeling safe to be vulnerable. Trust is created when both partners know they can rely on each other to be emotionally present, even when things get difficult. And communication is the key to building that trust. Without open, honest conversations, resentment builds. And that's where control can sneak in. Now, I'm going to give y'all another quote, but I don't really know who this one is by because it did not list an author. But I'm going to share it because I liked it when I saw it. The best relationships are the ones where you can be yourself without worrying about judgment. Now, I know that sounds easy, right? But we've all had moments where we feel misunderstood or we hold back because we fear our partner won't understand. But here's the truth. If you're afraid to communicate, it's a sign that control may have taken root somewhere in the relationship. If you feel like you can't be fully honest or open, it might be time to address why. And it might be time for you to recognize that if you're not communicating, you're not giving your partner the opportunity to correct the problem, nor yourself. So I'm going to give you another example of another couple that I've worked with. We're going to call them Jasmine and Marcus. Jasmine had a hard time trusting Marcus after a past relationship where they'd been betrayed. They tried to talk about it, but every time they did, Marcus felt like he was being accused of something he hadn't done. But over time, their communication became strained and Jasmine's fear of being hurt turned into controlling behavior. What did that look like? Checking Marcus' phone, questioning where he was and where he was going. It wasn't until they had a real conversation about their insecurities, fears, and desires that Jasmine realized she had been subconsciously projecting her past experiences onto Marcus. Once they talked openly and honest about this, Marcus could reassure Jasmine that he was committed to her and building trust together. Didn't that sound beautiful? Here's the thing. Trust is built over time, but it starts with open communication. You need to create a safe space for both of you to share your thoughts, feelings, and even your vulnerabilities without fear of judgment or backlash. When you do that, you do break the cycle of control and move towards a partnership where both individuals are free to express themselves. We've been talking a lot about control, right? But I want to dive deeper into the moment when love turns into control. When does love, which is meant to empower, begin to morph into something that restricts and limits growth? And how do you even recognize it before it's too late? Good questions, right? Because sometimes it's hard to tell. Control can disguise itself as love so easily, especially if one person is overly protective or if there's a pattern of one person making all the decisions. But here's the thing. Control comes from a place of fear. Some might even call that anxiety. Fear of loss, fear of vulnerability, fear of being hurt. And when that fear takes the lead and takes over, it's easy to slip into controlling behaviors without even realizing it. And then you're in trouble. I'm going to give you some red flags that help you identify that controlling behavior is starting to play out. Jealousy disguised as protection. That's a good one. If your partner is constantly worried about who you're talking to or where you're going, it might feel like concern, but in reality, it's controlling behavior, especially the way that it's said, because sometimes we all know it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I'm going to just leave that one right there. Micromanaging decisions. This one's a good one too, because if you're making decisions for your partner instead of letting them choose for themselves, red flag, duh, you're being controlling. Okay. Guilt tripping. If you're using your partner's love against them to get what you want, something like, if you loved me, you do this for me. Yeah, that's controlling behavior right there. That's a controlling statement right there. Okay. Just so we're clear. Because here's the kicker. Control doesn't usually come with a dramatic confrontation. More often than not, it is subtle, sneaky, and wrapped up in the disguise of, I'm just looking out for you. But these little moments can erode the trust in a relationship, leading to resentment, self-doubt, and disconnection. And if you're smart, especially if this is excessive, it's going to lead to your partner leaving. Okay, so I'm going to give y'all an example here. We're going to take a couple I know and we're going to call them Samantha and Derek. Samantha had a tendency to try to manage Derek's social life. Oof. How many of y'all out there got women that's controlling your lives? Well, Samantha was constantly telling Derek who he should hang out with, who was good enough to be around him, and where he should go. Derek, feeling restricted, started withdrawing and getting angry and snapping out on her too. He wasn't being open with Samantha about how he felt because he didn't want to upset her. But over time, he began to resent her for it. This is where the lashing out part came out. And their relationship started to unravel. So, how do you break free from this? I know some of y'all are asking. Well, the first step is recognizing when control has seeped into your relationship. If you find yourself manipulating or restricting your partner, or you're feeling manipulated or being restricted, it's time to step back and evaluate why you're doing this, or why are you accepting this? Are you afraid of losing them? Are you insecure? Or is there a past trauma that's coloring your perception of love? I want y'all to think about those questions as you evaluate your relationship. Before we get closer to the end, I want to end closer to a positive note if we can, by talking about how to break the cycle of control and foster a healthy, empowering relationship. So if you've been in a pattern where love has morphed into control, it's not too late to turn things around, I promise you. The most important thing is that both partners are committed to working together and putting in the effort. Here are a few things you can do to foster growth, trust, and communication in your relationship to hopefully help avoid some of this control. Acknowledge the behavior. It all starts with recognizing that control has seeped in. If you've noticed signs of controlling behaviors, it's time for an honest conversation. Encourage independence. Allow each other to grow independently. Pursue individual hobbies, interests, and goals, because this strengthens your connection. It strengthens your relationship long term. Respect boundaries, because I've been talking about that, right? Because boundaries aren't walls. They're markers of respect and understanding. So set them and honor them together. Positive reinforcement. Instead of using guilt or manipulation to get what you want, use encouragement and positive reinforcement to create a healthy dynamic. Instead, try regular check-ins. Have conversations where you check in with each other's needs, desires, and emotional well-being, because that's important. And I think this is a good segue for a good example story. Let's say I had a couple that I worked with. We're going to call them Riley and Jordan. They had a rough patch where Riley felt like they were constantly making decisions for Jordan. But they had a heart-to-heart conversation about their needs for autonomy and freedom. Riley acknowledged their controlling behavior and started to actively encourage Jordan to make decisions independently. Over time, Jordan felt more empowered and confident, and their bond grew stronger because of it. Makes sense, right? Breaking the cycle of control isn't easy, but it's so worth it. When both partners are given the freedom to grow and evolve as individuals, that's when true love thrives. So take the time to check in with each other. Ask yourself, is my relationship empowering us both, or is it holding us back? Now, before we wrap up today's discussion, let's take a step back and look at some of the external forces that influence how we view love and control in relationships. Specifically, we need to talk about generational patterns, societal views, and cultural expectations, because whether we realize it or not, these factors shape how we show up in our relationships, sometimes without us even knowing it. Generational patterns are often passed down without us even realizing it. How many times have we heard someone say, "This is how it was in my family," or "I saw my parents do this, so it's how I expect relationships to be." Our family dynamics, especially growing up, influence the way we navigate relationships later in life. If we grew up in a home where one partner held more control, or maybe where one partner was overly passive, it's easy to think that's what love looks like. We mimic these behaviors because it's what we know. And we don't realize we're repeating these patterns until they start to feel unhealthy. I want to share a quick story. Let's say this couple I worked with named Kira and Sam. Kira grew up in a family where her mother was extremely controlling, especially when it came to her father. This wasn't done out of malice. Her mother just believed she knew what was best for her family and was trying to protect them. But this was the model Kira had for love. Someone needs to take charge and the other needs to comply. Let that one sink in. So when Kira started dating Sam, she found herself controlling his decisions, just like her mom did with her dad. It wasn't intentional, but Sam felt stifled, and Kira was confused about why he was pulling away. Now, let's talk about societal views and how they influence what we expect from relationships. Think about how love is often portrayed in the media, movies, TV shows, and social media. There's a constant narrative of what perfect love looks like. It's all about the grand gestures, romantic dates, and sometimes even the idea of controlling love, where one person sacrifices everything for the other. That one right there. And while love can be selfless and beautiful, these societal ideas can create unrealistic expectations that aren't necessarily healthy for a relationship. I'm going to pause right there so y'all can gather the impact of that. Take, for example, the idea of a soulmate or a one true love. It's so ingrained in our culture that many people feel like they found the person they should own or control in some way, shape, or form, because they're meant to be together forever? I don't think so, because this view can often turn toxic. The idea that two people are so intertwined that one person has to control aspects of the other's life or the relationship to succeed is just unhealthy. Okay. According to research from the Journal of Marriage and Family Therapy, cultural views on control and relationships are often rooted in societal expectations of gender roles. In cultures with more traditional gender roles, controlling behaviors are often justified as being protective or caring, even though they may negatively impact relationship satisfaction and emotional well-being. Wow, that's crazy, right? And this isn't just about Western ideals. Different cultures have their own unique views on relationships. In some cultures, there's a strong emphasis on family honor and maintaining certain appearances. I said it. Some of y'all are like, oh my gosh, she about to spill all the beans. Because this can sometimes lead to one partner controlling the other to preserve family status or societal perception. We've all seen situations where a partner is controlled or manipulated under the guise of cultural expectations. These expectations can be so deeply ingrained that they impact how people express love and control without even realizing it. Can I give y'all an example to drive that one home even more? Let's look at, let's say, I'm going to call this couple Amira and Lewis, who came from different cultural backgrounds. And yes, this was a couple that I actually worked with. Amira's family comes from a traditional background where certain gender roles are emphasized, while Lewis, coming from a more progressive culture, doesn't subscribe to those norms. Amira found herself wanting to adhere to her family's expectations about the type of relationship she should have, expectations about how much control her partner should have over household decisions. But Lewis, whose culture emphasized mutual respect and equal partnerships, began to feel the pressure and tension of these expectations. Their relationship faced a real challenge. How could they navigate the conflicting cultural views they brought into the relationship while still honoring each other's autonomy and love? These societal and cultural pressures can create tension in any relationship. It's important to recognize that while we may love each other deeply, The way we show that love can be influenced by forces outside our control. It's up to us to become aware of these influences and ensure that our relationships are based on mutual respect, understanding, and trust, not on inherited patterns or societal pressures. So, as we finish today's episode, I want you to think about how generational patterns, societal views, and cultural expectations might be influencing your own relationship. Have you ever considered how your parents' relationship might affect your own approach to love and control? How about the images of love we see in movies or online? Do they align with your personal values, or are they setting unrealistic expectations? And when it comes to cultural influences, are there traditions or expectations that are creating tension in your relationship? Yes, these are tough questions, but they're important, because when we understand the external forces shaping our behaviors, we can consciously decide whether to continue those patterns or create new, healthier dynamics. Love should be about growth, respect, and freedom, not control, manipulation, or fear. Remember, relationships are ever evolving. We can break free from limiting patterns and create partnerships where both people feel empowered to grow, love, and be their authentic selves. And when we do that, we are no longer bound by the constraints of generational patterns or societal views. We can create our own path, a path based on mutual respect, trust, and freedom. All right. Now that we've covered all of that, my friends, my couples, that wraps up today's deep dive into love, control, and the external forces that influence our relationships. I hope this episode has given you some things to think about and tools to reflect on the ways generational patterns and cultural influences and societal pressures show up in your life. I know that was long. Oof, I had to get it out for y'all. But remember, love is about empowerment, not control. It's about lifting each other up, supporting each other's growth, and creating a space where both people can thrive. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Hearts Wine from Hearts Distractions, for exclusive content. And don't forget to visit our website at www.aliciasdistractions.com for more resources and updates, which are coming soon. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for more relationship tips and discussions. And if your heart feels blessed, share this with someone that you know who needs it, or maybe even share with your partner if they need to hear it. Until next time, remember, relationships are complicated, but they can be beautiful when both partners feel loved, respected, and free to grow. Cheers!